Hi everyone, the prior video talked to you about the anatomy portion of this lab, so now we're going to talk about the physiology portion. We have three main objectives. The first is to know and be able to predict how changes in blood pressure and flow will affect glomerular filtration, how aldosterone antidiuretic hormone will affect urine output, and then 10 common things that urine analysis test strips will test for and what that means. All right, so that's basically here. So it's just a little bit of an introduction, giving you some definitions as well. Our first objective, changes in blood pressure and flow. You can read through this, but basically an increase in blood pressure will cause an increase in pressure in the glomerulus. That increased pressure will increase the filtration rate. As a result, urine volume increases. Look at all those nice bold words. And then basically the opposite. So blood pressure is tied to filtration and urine formation. As far as flow goes, what we're going to be talking about is those afferent arterial, the glomerulus, and then efferent arterial. So remember, the afferent arterial is what is bringing blood into the glomerulus, and then the efferent is taking it away from the glomerulus. I often think of that as those three as a water hose with a U-shaped bend in it. It's like the afferent arterial, the U part of the bend is the glomerulus, and then moving away is the efferent arterial. So as that U shape is the glomerulus, there's lots of holes in it. So as I increase pressure going into that, if this was a hose, right, the water would squirt more out of the hole as I increase the flow into that bend or that curve. If I decrease the amount of flow going into that bend or curve that has a hole in it, like the less water that will leak out. Okay, so think of that if I ask questions about, like, if I increase the radius of the afferent arterial, think about that again, that's the flow going into the U-shaped bend. If you increase that radius, more water is going in. More water means more pressure, which means more filtration, right? If I decrease the afferent, less flow, less filtration, right? Let's think about the efferent arterial. If I increase its radius, not doing anything to the afferent, now all of a sudden we're going from a tiny diameter, and then all of a sudden we're going to have a very large diameter in the efferent. Well, that's actually going to reduce the pressure here in that bend, right? If you just think about that a little think about it this way. If I'm stepping on the hose, like past where the hole is, if I step on it here, that kind of backs up the pressure, and so the water would squirt out more. That would be similar to like having a very narrow efferent arterial. However, if I take my foot off of it or even make it wider, that would cause less of a backup pressure, I guess, which would make the water squirt less, so it'll be less filtration. Okay, so as the efferent arterial size increases, leaving the afferent alone, as the efferent increases, the pressure will decrease, the filtration will decrease, urine production will decrease, right? As I constrict the efferent arterial, again, leaving the afferent alone, as I constrict the efferent, pressure will increase, filtration will increase, urine production will increase. Okay. And then as we get into aldosterone and antidiuretic hormone, aldosterone is responsible for the reabsorption and the secretion of potassium. So the body is making sure we are retaining sodium and losing potassium in the urine. So wherever there's more sodium, that's hypertonic. Wherever you're hypertonic, it's going to basically draw water toward it. So the more salt you reabsorb, the more water you're going to retain from the urine. You're not going to pee it out. You're not going to lose it in the urine. So more concentrated your urine will be. Or another way to look at it, the more water that is reabsorbed, the lower the urine output, the greater the urine concentration. Antidiuretic hormone will work along with aldosterone to help with this. It also causes a reabsorption of water. Again, the more water that is reabsorbed, the lower the urine output, the greater the urine concentration. Now, if we were in person, we'd have these urine test strips. They're sometimes called multi-sticks strips because there's 10 different like little squares on them. And what you would do is you dip it in urine, and then there's different chemicals on those different squares, and they change color based on what is present in your urine or not, as the case may be. So what you would do is you dip it in the urine. You have like slightly different times that you would wait, either 30 seconds to up to about, I think, 120 seconds for some of them. And then it would let you know if whether or not you have glucose in your urine, or bilirubin in your urine, or ketones, or specific gravity, or blood, or pH, protein, urobilinogen, nitrates, or leukocytes, white blood cells, right? So some of these you would find just normally it's just a normal sort of test, but then other things are not. So for example, leukocytes, right? Those are white blood cells, and normally you should not have white blood cells in your urine, right? You should not be filtering those out of your bloodstream. So the presence of those would indicate an infection in the urinary tract somewhere, right? And usually you double check that with your nitrite strip to make sure like it's not like a false positive or might not be something else, to help diagnose that, yeah, it is a UTI, for example. So for this portion of a quiz, what you might be asked is this normally found in the urine? Yes, no. What might it indicate? It might indicate a urinary tract infection. It might indicate a bacterial infection. Any of those kinds of answers would be okay. In the ones where you're given a number, like in the case of urobilinogen or even protein, don't worry about those. That I don't expect you to memorize these numbers or anything like that. You won't be asked for those. More important that you know, like, should it be present in your urine under normal conditions? If so, what does it mean? So for example, like specific gravity, I mean, that all that's saying is how concentrated your urine is. So it's going to be somewhat concentrated, more than water. So that's all it's saying. So that's not bad. You have a specific gravity. That's a normal kind of thing. Pretty much all these other ones you should not be finding it. Any kind of presence of it will indicate some sort of an issue. So what might it indicate? Would you normally find glucose in urine? No. What might its presence indicate? Diabetes, right? Whether you say type 1, type 2, or diabetes, it's fine. So hopefully that makes sense of like what you will be expected to know for this part of the urinary system quiz.